Hey Epicenter Church, welcome once again to the Epicenter Church pre-show. My name is Ian. I'm the family life pastor here at Epicenter, and I will be your host here at the Epicenter Church pre-show. As you can probably tell from behind me, I'm coming to you from my home as we stay home for the holidays once again this week. Stay home for the holidays part 2. Also, if you've ever seen the Epicenter Church pre-show before, you know that whoever's hosting, whether it's me or Tim, we usually have a guest. And today, as you can see, I'm standing here alone, which means that my guest today is you. That's right, you are going to be, anyone who's out there watching right now during this pre-show, you get to be our guest here at the Epicenter Church pre-show. It's going to be an interactive morning today here at Epicenter, and so since you are our guest, you know that when we have a guest, what do? We interview them. So I'm going to be asking you a series of questions that you get to answer in the comments wherever you're watching. Now, I personally won't get to read and interact with your comments because we're streaming on 3 different platforms. It'd be impossible for my ADD brain to pay attention to all those comments and still host this pre-show. As a matter of fact, as you can see, I'm getting distracted just thinking about it. But we do have hosts on all 3 platforms that will interact with you as much as possible. And you can also interact with one another as you answer these questions. So we're going to interview you, our esteemed guest, on today's Epicenter Church pre-show. And in between some of the questions, we'll work in some announcements and other information that you might need. So the first question for every single one of you is, you know, Christmas was just 9 days ago, if I'm doing my math right. What is the best gift you have ever gotten? Make sure you type it in the comments, interact with the answers from others, but let us know what's the best gift. It doesn't even have to be a Christmas gift. It could be a birthday gift, could have just been I'm thinking of you gift, but what is the best gift that you have ever received? And while you're typing, I just want to let you know that if this is your first time joining us here at Epicenter Church, watching online, we would love to connect with you, and the best way to make that happen is for you to fill out a digital connection card. You can do that by going to yourepicenter.com/welcome home. Fill out that digital connection card, and we will send a gift to you in the mail wherever you live. No matter where you are, we're going to get something into your hands if you fill out that digital connection card. And again, that's yourepicenter.com/welcome home. Hopefully by now you have been able to write in the answer there, what is the best gift you have ever received? For me, it's pretty complicated. I've received a lot of gifts. I've got an awesome, generous wife and family. But my favorite gifts are usually, they fall in one of 2 categories. Either it's something that someone put a lot of thought into. No matter what it is, I love those kind of gifts. This year, my wife and I came up with 10 different categories, and we had a certain budget. We had to buy gifts for each other in each of those 10 categories. So I really love that. Got some cool stuff. So that's one category where it's my favorite kind of gift because you really put a lot of thought in it. And the second is if it's shoes. That's okay, simple enough. All right, so hopefully you were all able to share some great gift getting stories as well. And the second question, it's a little bit of a thinker, but also hopefully we're going to get some good recommendations off of this interview question for all of you, our guests here on the Epicenter Church pre-show. And the question is, what is your favorite restaurant that is not located in Cumberland County? It could be in Wake County, it could be in Hope County, it could be in South Carolina, it could be in Florida, it could be in California, wherever it is. Maybe somewhere when you go home, you make sure you stop here. But let us know, what is your favorite restaurant that is not located in Cumberland County? And while you're answering that question, just let me just let you know about ekidsathome.com. That is the website that we've set up for you and your kids in kindergarten through 5th grade to access the curriculum for this week and keep your kids up to date with what's happening in eKids and keep them connected to Jesus as well. And also, I want to let you know that Epic Students is hosting or holding our 2021 kickoff party this Wednesday, January 6th at 7 o'clock p.m. And that's for students in grades 6 through 12. So we would love to have your students join us. Hopefully you've been able to answer that question of what's your favorite restaurant that's not in Cumberland County. I'm looking forward to going back through the comments and finding some good recommendations for myself. As for me, my wife and I love every time we visit Raleigh, we stop in downtown and we go to the Pit. Well, not every time, but as often as we can. It's a great barbecue restaurant. We love it. So that's probably our favorite restaurant that's not in Cumberland County. So our third question now, for those of you who are our guests here on the Epicenter Pre-Show, which if you're watching, that's you, is have you ever been told that you look like someone famous? And if so, who? Have you ever been told that you look like someone famous? And if so, who? And hey, listen, if not, who do you wish someone would tell you that you look like that's famous? All right, so while you're answering that question, I just want to let you know that next Sunday, January 10th, we will be back to in-person services here, well, not at my house. Don't come to my house next Sunday on January 10th. Go to Epicenter Church at either 9 or 11 o'clock. We'll be here online as well, but we'll also be in person. On January 10th, we're starting off a brand new series. We've got a brand new theme, which I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you're going to see some more information. If you haven't already heard, if you've watched last week, you know what the theme is. If not, you're going to find out in just a little while. But that's the theme. Pastor Mark's going to have a great word for us, so make sure you join us in person or online, but don't come to my house, next Sunday, January 10th at 9 and 11 a.m. So, have you ever been told that you look like somebody famous, and if so, who? Hopefully you've been able to answer that question by now. My answer is I used to do my student teaching in downtown Flint, Michigan. I grew up about 30 or 40 miles from there, and one day I wore a suit to the elementary school I was student teaching at, and one of the parents at the school saw me and said, "Ooh, you look like Justin Timberlake." And I have never forgotten that. No one else has ever told me since then that I look like Justin Timberlake, but I am holding on to that compliment as proof that, okay, I don't look like Justin Timberlake, but someone did tell me that one day, and I've been feeling myself ever since. Listen, we've got just a couple more questions for you as our guests here on the Epicenter Church Pre-Show. I hope you're enjoying your time as our guests. But the next question is another one where you get to recommend some things to your fellow guests this morning, your fellow Epicenturians, if you will. And that's this: what is your favorite worship song or group? Maybe you can't pick just one song, but there's a group that really helps you get in the presence of God and really get your worship on, if you will. So share with us in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or our website. Let us know, what is your favorite worship song or group? And while you're answering that, I just want to let you know that if you want to give online to Epicenter Church, you can do that by going to yourepicenter.com/give. Once you get there, it'll give you a list of several different options. It's as easy as clicking the link and following the directions from there. There's, again, like I said, there's some other options on there as well, but you can go to yourepicenter.com/give and you will be able to give online. And of course, you can give in person again next Sunday when we return to in-person services. Hey, my favorite worship song, I don't have one specific song. There's a band called, I believe they're called Citizens, and they used to be called Citizens and Saints, but I might have that backwards. They might be Citizens and Saints now. I really don't know, but their Citizens is in the name, and they take a lot of old hymns and rework them with modern music, and I love it. I just love the lyrics to the old hymns, the depth and the theology that's there. Another band that does this really well is a band called King's Kaleidoscope. So those are probably my two favorite worship groups, if you will. And then our last question. All right, our last question here in the Epicenter Church Pre-Show, our last question for you as our esteemed guests here on the Pre-Show is not a resolution question, although because resolutions are cliche, so we're gonna find a loophole here. Not what is your resolution for 2021, but what do you hope to do differently in 2021? What's one thing you hope to do differently? Not that you hope happens differently, because you don't have control over that, but what's one thing that you do have control over that you hope to do differently in 2021? And while you're answering that question, I'm going to tell you one more time that if this is your first time with us here at Epicenter Church, we want to connect with you. Just fill out a digital connection card at yourepicenter.com/welcome home. Answer the quick questions that are there. We will send a gift to you wherever you are just to welcome you to the family here at Epicenter Church. All right, so hopefully you've been able to answer that question. What's one thing you hope to do differently in the year 2021? For me, I'm hoping to read more books. I used to be a really great reader, and then I got a job and got married and had kids, and here we are. I don't read anywhere near as much as I want to, but my goal this year is to read 21 books in the year 2021. So one book every 2 weeks, basically. That's my personal goal. I'm about halfway through one already this year, although I technically started in 2020. But I'm going to count it, give myself a little head start. So that's the one thing that I'm going to do differently. Hopefully you came up with some really good things as well. And that's it. Thank you so much for being our guests here on the Epicenter Church pre-show. I hope you've enjoyed this time being interviewed and answering some questions in the comments. Hopefully you've found some things in common with one of your fellow Epicenturians this morning. And in just a moment, I'll be back to share with you what's going to happen for the awesome service we have planned out for Stay Home for the Holidays, week 2. Hey, good morning, Epicenter Church. Thank you for joining us for Stay Home for the Holidays, week 2. My name is Ian. I'm the family life pastor here at Epicenter. I'm coming to you from my home as we stay home for the holidays once again. In case you missed it last week, we've got a lot of volunteers who serve every single week. And so Pastor Mark decided that it would be just an awesome idea to give the volunteers and the staff and everyone 2 weeks off to do things online only here at Epicenter Church. And so you get to watch this wherever you are, whether you're home, whether you're still visiting family, getting ready to come home, wherever you may be. We're so thankful to you for joining us here online at Stay Home for the Holidays, week 2. Listen, we're going to do things a little bit different today, a little bit differently than we've really ever done before. And what's going to happen is I'm going to be your host, if you want to call that, or maybe even your guide, as we revisit the year that was 2020. As we kind of take a look at what's going on. You know, Pastor Mark said many times this year that church is not canceled, it's just different. And we did things, a lot of things, really different in the year 2020. And so we're going to kind of look at some of those. We're going to revisit our theme for the year. We're going to look at some of the ways that God used Epicenter Church to make a difference in our community, even as things were going kind of crazy all around us. God still did some great things in and through Epicenter Church, and we're going to celebrate those things together, as well as revisiting some sermons that Pastor Mark preached. And I know and believe that you are going to be touched and ministered to by the messages that we're going to hear, the testimonies we're going to talk through, all of that stuff. You are going to enjoy this service in a really awesome way, and I can't wait to share it with you this morning. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do worship a little differently, kind of highlighting the way we had to do worship differently throughout the year 2020. As if you've been with us for a while, you know that we did all kinds of different worship. We did live worship. We did pre-recorded worship. We did acoustic worship in a little circle. We did stay-at-home worship for several weeks. And so today we're going to get a little taste of a few of those different styles. Not all of them are going to fit into our time together this morning, but we're going to take a look at a couple of different ways that we did worship here at Epicenter Church in 2020. So check it out.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my turn till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my turn till I met you. 'Cause when you called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. Yeah, the old made new. Jesus, when I met you, oh, what a day when you called my name. I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Y'all ready? I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. And when you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. Hey!
Carried a burden
I wasn't created to bear it alone. And I hear your invitation to let it all go. And I see it now, I'm laying it down. And I know that I need you. Run to the Father, I fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, the reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I'll run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, oh. Saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your son for redemption, the price for my heart. And I don't have a context for that kind of love. I don't understand it, can't comprehend it. All I know is I need you. Run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, a reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 and again and again. Oh, oh, Lord has been in your sight long before my first breath, running into your arms, running to life from death. I feel His love deep in my chest. Your mercy is calling out, just as I am. You pull me in. I know I need you now. Run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, the reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again. Run to the Father, fall into grace. Done with the hiding, the reason to wait. My heart found a surgeon, my soul found a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, 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 and
Hey, before we do anything else, can we just pray this morning? Hey God, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to gather together while apart. As we go through stay home for the holidays, week 2 this morning, God, I know that your spirit and your presence can be with us, even though we're all watching at home or wherever we may be, through computer screens or phone screens or wherever else, God, I know that you can show up and change lives this morning, even through this format, maybe even especially through this format, God. So I pray that you would be with us in our time together this morning. Even though we're together while apart, God, I pray that you would move through this service. That the words, the clips that we play, the messages that we revisit, the conversations that we have, God, would speak to the heart of somebody listening, and that you would get a hold of our lives and bring about change in us, God, through this service and through our time together this morning. In your name we pray. We all said, amen. Many of you know that we choose a word or a theme for the year every single year here at Epicenter, and this year's theme was more. You might have heard Pastor Mark talk a little bit about this last week in Stay Home for the Holidays week 1, but when we chose that theme, or when he chose that theme, more, for the year 2020, this isn't really what we expected. As a matter of fact, he sent a message to all of us on staff on New Year's Eve that I want to read just a very small portion of that message. He wrote, "What a year! As I reflect, it seems the year has been more about less than more. But I've come to realize that many times God does more when there is less certainty and less of the things we thought that there would be more of." And so even though that word more seems somewhat contradictory to the way that the year went, as Pastor Mark said there so well, I believe that God was doing more in a lot of ways that weren't necessarily obvious or immediately apparent. And so what I want us to do now for the next few minutes is revisit a message that Pastor Mark preached in the very first month of the year in 2020. It's week 3 of our series, More, or Meant for More, as he was kind of unveiling or rolling out the theme for 2020. He preached this message on January, the 3rd week of 2020. So check out this clip from More.
So God said, if you'll go to the brook at Kerith, you can drink there, and I'll have the ravens feed you there. He goes to the brook at Kerith, and God does exactly what he said he was going to do, because God is a God of more. Hello? But after he was there for a little while, the brook dried up. Now God is telling him to go somewhere else, to Zarephath. Now God is requiring more of Elijah, and in order for Elijah to experience all that God has for him, he's got to do the more that God is requiring of him. Just a thought, and I know it's probably for a different sermon, but Elijah is doing every single thing that God asked him to do. Everything. But the brook still dried up. How does that play on your faith? When you're doing everything that you feel like you should be doing, but yet the thing that has been getting you through has now dried up. The thing that has sustained you has now dried up. I must be preaching to myself up in here. Because after all, what is faith? Faith is the substance of things asked for, but yet the evidence not seen. Faith comes by what? Believing, not by seeing. And sometimes our faith tends to take a back seat to what we see, because what we see tends to contradict our faith. So here, the brook dries up. The brook here represents so many different things. You cannot just see the drought for the people of Israel. You need to see the drought for your own life, because the brook could represent your health drying up. The brook could represent your finances drying up. You're doing everything that you know how to do. You're working more, but it seems like you have less. The brook could be your time. You guard it as valuable, but something always seems to be draining it. Could it be that the reason why the brook tends to be drying up in your life is because God wants you to see more than just what he can do for you? He wants to do something in and through you. Could it be that the brook dries up because God does not want you to place your trust in what he gifted you with? He wants you to place your trust in him. Rather than talking about what you don't have, we need to be celebrating who has us. Are you with me? Churches tend to do this all around the country. They celebrate what used to be. Could it be the antithesis of more is being complacent in what was last? That's good. We can just close this thing up and go home on that. I'll try to say it again. Could it be the antithesis of more is being complacent in what was last? Churches today will celebrate what used to be, and they've stopped preparing for what God is doing now. Can I tell you something? The moment that you begin to worship the gifts that he's given you and they become more important to you, and you celebrate how good those gifts are to you rather than who he is to you, that your brook will always dry up. So he says to Elijah, he says, okay, Elijah, the brook's dried up. The raven's not brought you any food in days. You see, there's no water running down the brook. So I want you to get up and I want you to go to Zarephath. That don't make sense, God. I ain't going to Zarephath. I mean, it would be easy for Elijah to say that. I ain't going to Zarephath. Zarephath is a Gentile city. They don't even believe what we believe. Why would you send me there? I don't want to go to Zarephath, and then you're going to send me to a widow woman, and you're going to claim that she can take care of all my needs. Everybody in the ancient world knows that widows are impoverished. They just don't have enough. And you're going to send me there? It makes more sense for me to hang out right here by this brook that one time sustained me than to go there, because she probably doesn't even believe in you. But he goes to Zarephath, and when he gets to Zarephath, God says, there she is, right there she is. And he looks over at her, this little old widowed woman. She's reaching down and grabbing sticks because she's going to go home and make a fire. And when he sees her, he's like, God, that can't be the one. That can't be it, God. She's malnourished. God, she can't even take care of herself. God, she's gathering up sticks to have a fire. And then he looks off in the distance and he sees her house because they're at the city gates, and he sees her. God, she's got a shack. It's not a mansion. How do you think she's going to take care of me? She can't even take care of herself, God. She can't even take care of the things that are coming against her. She's gathering up sticks and she's trying. Come on, God, I thought you were going to send me to a resort. I mean, I'm dealing with this drought. The least you could do is send me to the Marriott. This woman can't take. Sometimes the way God provides looks different than we expected. Sometimes we miss what God is trying to do because what he's trying to do through us looks so different than what we need from him. Good Lord, it looks like we're on two different streets here. This is what I need from him, and this is what he's trying to do through me. Come on, God, this can't be. Listen, it was the same way for Jesus. People missed him being the Savior of the world because they were looking for this Savior to come in riding with force, taking over this political system and causing people to be free from this political system. But God sent Jesus Christ in the form of a baby because he wasn't concerned about a political system. He was concerned about freeing people spiritually. But people miss Jesus Christ and look past him because he doesn't look like they thought he would look. I wonder how many opportunities we've missed because they come in a form that we didn't expect him to come in.
Hey, what a great word. And you know, little did we know when Pastor Mark preached that message January of last year, how many opportunities we would have to put that message into action or put it into practice. And so, you know, again, I want to make this week of Stay Home for the Holidays a little more interactive than what we might be used to. So if you would, put in the comments one way that God has used you unconventionally this year, or maybe a way that you've seen God use others unconventionally to work in your life. But just again, wherever you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, even our website, we've got a space for comments on all three of those platforms. So just let us know a way that that God has used you unconventionally this year, or in ways that you didn't necessarily expect. Obviously, one of the great ways that we were able as a church to be used unconventionally was through Hop at Home. This past April, we gave away thousands of bags to really thousands of families to help them celebrate Easter at home, since we couldn't do Hop in the Park, and all of the shutdowns and closures were really fresh in a lot of different ways around Easter. And so we had the awesome opportunity to work in some very unconventional ways and make a difference in our community. And as the year went on, and again, obviously in the middle of March, a lot of things, schools closed, many businesses were told to shut down or limit capacity, and we as the church were also required to stop gathering in person for a little while. And it was really cool because when that happened, Pastor Mark was in the middle of a series called Positioned, about being positioned by God to do things that maybe you weren't planning or expecting to do. And so what I want to share with you next is a clip from one of the messages from that series, Positioned. It's actually the very first sermon that Pastor Mark preached without anybody in the congregation from March of 2020. So check out this clip from Positioned.
Verse 26. What does it say?
Jesus responded, "Why are you afraid? You have so little faith." Then he got up and rebuked the wind and waves, and suddenly there was a great calm.
Now, how many of you, if you're having like the best nap, I mean, or at night, you're just sleeping and somebody wakes you up. Does anybody in this place like get up and you're just happy, somebody woke you up from the best nap and you're like, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you." Man, you want to rebuke them. Jesus was not rebuking them for waking him up. He was rebuking the fear that they had. He was not rebuking them for waking him up. He was rebuking the fear that they had. Because, listen, they had seen Jesus do some incredible things. They had seen the goodness of Christ at work. And the moment that life begins to go in the opposite direction of their faith, they begin to question, does he care about us? Is he going to let us drown? Jesus, are you going to let us drown? Come on, don't you care about us? You did all kinds of stuff for them. Why do we have to suffer this? And he stood up and he rebuked the wind and the waves. And you know what? We've seen his goodness. We've seen his goodness. If you've been a Christ follower for any amount of time, you've seen the goodness of God. You know his goodness. You know he's been good to you. You know that his grace has been poured out in your life when you didn't deserve it. You know that he showed up and he's helped you in the past. Listen, we may not have, knowledge of the future. We may not know how it's all going to play out, but we can have some uncertainty. But one thing that we need to be certain in is that God is always good. He is always good. There's no virus. There is no stock market crash. There is no collapse in the economy, any health issue that will disprove that God is always good.
That's good.
And then, like, one of my favorite parts of the story that sometimes I have to read to myself over and over and over and over and over and over is notice that Jesus deals with their fear before he deals with the storm. He did not deal with the storm and then deal with their fear. He dealt with their fear. He was showing them this is how you deal with the storms in your life. He dealt with their fear and then he dealt with their storm. What did he say? Hold on a second. Let me read this to you. I'm going to read it. It says, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and he rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. See, he's trying to shift their focus. He's trying to move them back to a faith focus. He's trying to move them away from fear and move them back to faith. And he's saying, are you going to watch the waves, or are you going to watch the one that's over the waves? Are you going to watch the waves or the one that's over the waves? Are you going to, give in to the bad news, or are you going to hold on to the good news of Jesus Christ? Which is it going to be? Which is it going to be in this season? Because I know that you're sitting at home today and with not really knowing, uncertainties, maybe quarantined, maybe whatever. But are you going to focus on Jesus, or are you going to focus on what's wrong? Because when you begin to focus on Jesus Christ, you realize that his goodness, that he will never leave you nor forsake you, that he is with you every single step of the way, that you may be in a storm, but you don't have to worry about the absence of Jesus Christ because he was in the boat. Three things I'm going to give you at home. I want you to write these things down at home. I know you can't write these things down, but three things, and then I'm going to close with this. Three things. No, you have Psalms, right? I got to go to Psalms. So three things. One, God has power over your storm, so trust him. God has power over your storm. It doesn't matter what your storm looks like, Jesus. It doesn't matter what your storm, it doesn't matter if the stool you're sitting on is breaking. Jesus, a screw just fell out. There's another one. It doesn't matter. Jesus is over your storm. So you have to trust in him. Secondly, you have to know that you have the God of peace. Think about that. You have the God of peace. You do not have just the peace that God offers. You have the God who offers peace. There's a difference. He was in the boat. They're wigging out, and Jesus is just a touch away. He's just a touch away. They can see Jesus. He's not worried like them. He's in the boat with them, which takes me to the third thing. Jesus is always in your boat. He's always in your boat. He's always there. You may feel like you're all alone, but you're not alone. You may feel overwhelmed, but what you're going through can never overwhelm him. You may feel like that things are beyond your control, but they're not beyond his control. You may have great uncertainty, but you know and have to trust and be certain that God is good, and you need to hold on to the truth that it doesn't matter where you are or what you're going through, that you may have uncertainty, but you can hold on to the certainty that even though you don't know what tomorrow holds, that he holds tomorrow in the palm of his hand. In the same way that he stood up and he said, "Peace, be still," it's the same way that he can speak into your heart and into your spirit and into your mind, whether you're going through sickness, divorce, financial despair, whatever it is, he's with you. And there is no storm that is any match for your Savior.
Hey, again, what an awesome message. It's so great to know that, among all those other things that Pastor Mark shared in that really impactful and inspiring clip, it's just a great reminder to remember that Jesus is always in our boat. Even when things aren't going the way we expected, even when it feels like life is swirling and storming all around us, it's so great to know that Jesus is in the boat with us. And if you have a story from how God kind of reminded you this year that he was with you even in what felt like a storm, please feel free to share that in the comments with us. Again, we want to make this an interactive service this morning. And listen, as we went along, continuing to learn how to do church not canceled but different, we tried lots of different approaches. We had one service we did entirely from home, very similar to this one. We would do roundtable conversations. Pastor Mark would preach to an empty congregation, all kinds of different things. But we were so excited in June when we were able to come back to gathering together in person in a limited capacity. In June, we did a Welcome Home series, then we did our Summer Replay series, and then in August, Pastor Mark did what I would call an accidental series. We went to revisit that topic of more that first week of August, and he ended up spending 4 weeks in 1 Samuel chapter 14, the story of Jonathan and his armor bearer. And so what I want us to do next is take a look at a clip from one of those messages. Again, it's revisiting last year's theme of more, but from the perspective of 1 Samuel chapter 14. And I'm sorry, from 1 Samuel chapter 14. There's a small chance I'm misremembering and it's 2 Samuel, but I'm almost positive that it's 1 Samuel chapter 14. And this message was called Not What You Think or Not What You Expected, but Better. Check it out.
And then the Bible says that Jonathan said, I'm going to the other side. And what's cool about it is God did not give him a specific word to go to the other side, but Jonathan knew in his faith that if he went to the other side, that God would meet him there. Somebody say other side. Listen, let's go to the other side. Let's go to the other side of COVID-19. Let's go to the other side of craziness. Let's go to the other side of relational difficulty. Let's go to the other side of sickness. Let's go to the other side of destiny. Because when the church rises up and goes to the other side and begins to act on behalf of God, God will show up on your behalf. So Jonathan went to the other side with his armor bearer. We know the rest of the story, the rest of that particular part of the story anyway. Jonathan and his armor bearer, they killed 20 men in this initial raid inside of a half acre. 20 men die, and then something happens in the next part of this verse. It says Jonathan decided to go to the other side. And there's two types of faith that are present in this story. Before I get to the next part, there's two types of faith. One is the type of faith that Saul has, where it's an inactive faith. I mean, he's still a follower of God, but yet his faith is inactive. And then there's Jonathan's faith, who grabs the sword, sharpens the sword, and he goes to the other side. You see, there's so much symbolism here. Theologically, there's so much symbolism. One of the symbolic parts of this narrative is that this is a picture of how the church should operate. More specifically, how the individual Christ follower should operate. In fact, let me ask you this question. When was the last time that you took your sword of faith to the other side boldly? When was the last time that you boldly took your sword of faith to the other side? Because how many of you know God will act on your behalf, but sometimes it's not in a way that you expected. Are you with me? I mean, he will act on your behalf, but it's not in a way you expected. You had all of these visions of grandeur, and you thought God was going to show up this way, but yet God showed up this way, and it seemed to be totally opposite of the way you thought he was going to show up. God has a way of doing that. But let me say this to you. One thing that you can expect from God is when you use your faith, you can expect God to show up with his provision. When you use the sword of faith, you can expect him to show up and provide in a way that you could not provide for yourself. So that's what Jonathan did. He said, let's go to the other side. He didn't wait. He said, let's go. While Saul is waiting, Jonathan is going. While Saul is sitting under the pomegranate tree, Jonathan is going. Jonathan didn't say, let's go to the other side because God gave him a specific word. He said, let's go to the other side because he knew that he had a faith that compelled him to go to the other side. You see, what happens in the rest of this narrative is the result of Jonathan's faith. Because Jonathan's faith exposed the faithfulness of God. Jonathan didn't pray and stay like Saul. Jonathan prayed, sharpened his sword, and went. And because of it, let me show you something. Look at verse 15. Everybody say verse 15. In verse 15 it says, then panic struck the whole army. Those in the camp and in the field, and those in the outpost and the raiding parties, and the ground shook. It was a panic that was sent by God. Hold on a second. It was a panic that was sent by God. Grab this. This is not how Jonathan thought things would happen if he went to the other side, but yet God got involved in the happenings. How many times do we allow the circumstances in our lives to cause our reaction to be one of inaction? How many times do the circumstances look so large, the things that are coming against us, that it just causes us to retreat to underneath the pomegranate tree, and rather than reacting with the sword of faith, you begin to fall back into a place of inaction? How many times do we allow the odds that are coming against us to keep us out of what God has for us? Verse 15 says that a panic struck the entire army. A panic struck. A panic that was sent by God. They started fighting one another. Let me just go ahead and preempt the story. They started fighting one another until they were killing each other. Here's what is so cool. The people of Israel, the army of Israel, they did not have any swords. The Philistine army had all of the swords. And now God is using the Philistine army's swords against themselves. What I'm trying to say to you, and I don't think you're grabbing this, I don't think you're catching what I'm throwing, but sometimes you feel like what's against you is more than you can handle. But what you really need to realize is that what is coming against you, God may use it for you. What you think is a disadvantage, God will use as an advantage. Somebody needs to hear this. You feel like you're at a disadvantage, but that's the place to be, because God is using that place to reveal his power. It may not be what you thought. It could be better. It may not be what you thought. It could be better.
Hey, I know that there are so many things about the year 2020 that were absolutely not what I thought that they would be, but in many ways they were better. I can't remember a year when I've been able to spend as much time with my family as I have been able to this year. And you know, while every once in a while we tend to drive each other a little crazy, it's been so great for my relationship with my wife, with my kids, and even getting to know our new baby this year who's going to turn 1 in a couple weeks. It's been such a wonderful opportunity to spend time with them. And that's just one of many ways that it wasn't what I thought it would be, but it was even better. As the summer went along here at Epicenter Church, you know, Epic students returned to in-person services on August 19th. E-Kids returned for kindergarten through 5th grade on August 30th. E-Kids Junior returned towards the end of October, I believe. I don't remember the date exactly. And we've gotten back to doing church still different, but a little more like normal, but also not like normal at all. We're still operating at, you know, 50 limited or 50% capacity. We're still working hard to bring you some great content and a great online experience for those of you who are still watching from home. We're doing everything we can to connect with you, whether you're joining us in person or whether you haven't been to an in-person service since February, but still consider yourself part of Epicenter Church. We value every single one of you, and we're so thankful for you, for being part of the Epicenter Church family. But as things went on through the fall, we did a series in September called Washed, so a series in the fall. I don't remember if it was September or October, called Washed. And then we moved into a series called Serve. And again, that series was all about how God has, even in the middle of everything looking different and not being what we thought it would be, God was going to use us to make a difference, to make an impact in our community. Not just our community at large here at Epicenter Church, but our personal communities as well, our neighborhoods, our families, our workplaces, whatever it may. We were called to serve, even though life looks different. And so check out this clip from week 1 of our series, Serve.
But the men who had gone up with him said, We can't attack those people because they're stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelite people a bad report about the land that they had explored. Somebody say a bad report. They said the land that we explored devours those that are living in it. All of the people we saw there are of great size. We saw Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Go back to verse 26, though, and 27. Look, it says, they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community, and there they reported to them. Here's the report. What are you reporting? They said to the whole assembly, here's the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's the fruit, but the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified, and we even saw descendants of Anak there. But they are too powerful. But they are more than we can deal with. Can I ask you this question? Is reporting the news becoming more important than serving up the solution? Think about that. Is reporting the news becoming more important than serving up the solution? Because we're always reporting the news. We hear a piece of news on Fox or MSNBC or CNN, and the first thing that we do is let our fingers begin to do the talking. And we begin to convey what we've heard, spread what we've heard. What report are you giving? Has it become more important for us to give the news rather than serve up the solution? Because the people of Israel, they were like, we can't go. 12 spies. 2 of them said we can. 10 of them said we cannot. They're bigger than us. They're greater than us. They're too powerful. There are giants in the land. Listen, if you are not careful, the very thing that you see will influence what you do for the cause of Christ. After all, what is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence not seen. If faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence not seen, that means when we're going through a time that does not look like the promise, we've got to keep going because we're not living by sight, but rather by faith. And so if faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence not seen, the Bible also says faith without works is dead. Do you know what kills your faith? What kills your faith is inaction. So if you don't have action in your faith, the main reason why many of us don't have action in our faith is because of the report that we've chosen to believe, which ultimately kills the faith that we have, and therefore there's no action to our faith. Action is the evidence of your faith. It's easy to say, I believe. It's easy to come into the church and say, oh, I believe in God. It's easy to applaud God right in here because we've got AC, and it seems like the problems we leave on the outside and the cushiony seats, they feel really good, so we can sit here and we can applaud the goodness of God. But there is a difference between saying you believe and acting like you believe. Action is the evidence that accompanies your belief. So here were these people about to embark upon the journey of going into the promised land, but yet they would find themselves in a place where they would say they cannot go. You see, saved people, serve people sounds good, but so many times we believe a report that ultimately takes the action away from us. There's a report, COVID. There's a report, economic depression. There's a report, political chaos. There's a report, social injustice. There's a report, sickness. There's a report, death. There's a report, mask. There's a report. There's all of these things that cause us to have uncertainty. But can I tell you something, and someone needs to hear this? If uncertainty becomes more important to you than what God has spoken over your life, you will never realize the things that God spoke over your life. I need you to grab this. If uncertainty becomes more important to you because of the report that you've chosen to believe, then you will close off your spirit to the very things that God has spoken over your life. And what will become more important to you is how God is going to show up rather than God said that he would show up. And so our spirits become closed to the very things that God wants to do. And then we begin to live a lie. And the lie says, we can't do this. I heard an old preacher one time, he said, you can discard your faith and give up, or you can direct your faith and be lifted up. Which one do you want? You can discard your faith and you can give up, or you can direct your faith and you can be lifted up. Is anybody with me? You can discard your faith and you can give up, or you can direct your faith and you can be lifted up. Is somebody going to help me preach this message in this place? Verse 26 says, and they gave this report. Hold on a second. They gave this report. How many of you know, as Christ followers, the very report that we give has everything to do with the rapport that we have with the very people we're trying to reach? Oh, that was good. Let me say it again. How many of you know that the report that we choose to give as Christ followers has everything to do with the rapport that we have with the very people that we are trying to reach? And listen, our culture is inundated with bad news. I'm sick of bad news. That seems like all we have is bad news this and bad news that and bad news this. Don't you think it's time for Christ followers to stand up because we have the good news of Jesus Christ, and use the good news of Jesus Christ to plant a seed right in the middle of chaos? Because it's time for the church to rise up.
Hey, what an awesome reminder that even though it seems like we've been surrounded by bad news all year long, as Christ followers, we have the greatest news that has ever been delivered, and that is Jesus Christ, our Savior. And as such, we are called to serve others around us. What I want you to do right now is put in the comments, what is your favorite way that you were able to serve somebody else this year? Whether it was through giving or serving here at Epicenter Church or something in your neighborhood or at work. What is your favorite way that God used you through service to make a difference in somebody else's life? Real quickly, just some of the ways that God has used Epicenter Church to serve our community. We have a food pantry that has fed hundreds upon hundreds of families during this pandemic. We've partnered with the Department of Social Services to provide Christmas gifts for almost 200 teenagers in foster care, many of whom might not have gotten much at all for Christmas if it weren't for those generous donations. We've worked with local organizations and helped people as often and as much as we possibly can. And at the end of November, we celebrated with Bumper Crop and Operation Compassion. We collected over 12,000 pounds of food for our food pantry and served over 4,000 Thanksgiving meals to those in need. As a matter of fact, in just a moment, I'm going to play for you a clip of just a kind of a recap of what happened on that wonderful, awesome Operation Compassion Week, and some of the great ways that God used us to serve our community. But again, remember, put in the comments your favorite way that God used you to serve others this year. And once this kind of recap of Operation Compassion is over, what you're going to see after that is not me, but Pastor Mark sharing with you what the word is for 2021. So check it out.
visits Joshua and he empowers Joshua with a promise. He says to Joshua, I'm going to give you everywhere you place your feet. I'm going to bless you. I'm never going to leave you, nor am I going to forsake you. I will be with you always. And then after Joshua begins to lead the people of Israel into the promised land, it seems to be one battle after another, after another, after another. One difficult place after another. One year like 2020, one after the other, after the other. But at the end of Joshua's life, Joshua's word says something here. It says in verse 43 of chapter 22, it says, so the Lord gave Israel all of the land that he had sworn to give to their ancestors, which was 450 plus years before, close to 500 years. And they took possession of it and they settled there. The Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had sworn to their ancestors. Not one of their enemies withstood them. The Lord gave all of their enemies into their hands. Listen, I don't know about you, but I certainly would love to have rest on every side in 2021. I know that we're carrying COVID with us from 2020 into 2021. And as we turn the page, I know we're still going to be dealing with it in some way, shape, fashion, or form. I know that the past year has impeded our ability to do church as normal. We know that, and we've tried to adapt to that because we want to meet your needs. But I also believe that God is also going to give us rest on every side. And then he said this, hold on, before I read that last verse. He said, the Lord gave all of their enemies into their hands. Here's what I love about that. At the very beginning of this passage, he says, or at the very beginning of Joshua, he says to Joshua, I'm going to give you everywhere you place your feet, and I'm going to be with you everywhere you go. I will never leave you nor forsake you. But yet it was one battle after another, after another, after another. You see, God did not promise us that we would not have battles. What he promised us is that he would never leave us in those battles. He didn't promise us that we wouldn't have enemies, difficulties, COVID-19, problems, social injustice. He did not promise us that, but he did promise us that he would be with us in it. In other words, if we view him, if we view our problem through the eyes of God, we'll have a different perspective on our problem. And therefore, Joshua said this. This is what I love. And this is where I'm going to take us. I believe God is taking us in 2021. He says, not one of all of the Lord's good promises to Israel failed, not one. In other words, every last promise that he gave to them came to fruition. Every last one. Meaning that they fought battle after battle after battle, but yet God showed up, he showed up, he showed up, he showed up. It's not that they wouldn't have a battle. It's that those who were coming against them would not be victorious over them. God empowered them to go through all of the things that they went through. And then it said this. It says, not one of all the Lord's good promises to Israel failed. And it says, every one was fulfilled. Every last one was fulfilled. If you haven't picked it up by now, we have a word for every year. We've done this for the last several years. Last year was the word more. You were meant for more. 2021, the word is fulfilled, because I believe God is going to continue to do great things in your life, in Epicenter's lives. I believe God is going to do some incredible things in and through the life of this body and in your life. And I'm praying that God's word over your life, God's promises over your life will be fulfilled.
So there you have it. If you missed Stay Home for the Holidays week 1 last week, you now know that our word here at Epicenter Church for 2021 is fulfilled. As a matter of fact, say it with me or type it in the comments. Fulfilled. I cannot wait to celebrate with you when we come back to in-person services next Sunday. As we start out this theme, this idea, this mindset of living a life fulfilled. I don't know what word Pastor Mark has for us next week, but I know it's going to be amazing. So whether you join us in person or online, make sure you're there next Sunday, January 10th, as we celebrate with Fulfilled. And thank you so much for being part of Stay Home for the Holidays week 2 with all of us this morning. It has been my great honor to be your host or your guide, if you will, through 2020, the year that was at Epicenter Church, as we look forward to 2021? As a matter of fact, one question that I haven't asked you yet, one thing I haven't asked you to put in the comments is, what was your favorite moment of being part of Epicenter Church in 2020? Let us know in the comments, and while you're down there, also let us know, what are you most looking forward to as part of Epicenter Church in 2021? So it's really a two-part question there. What was your favorite moment or part of being part of Epicenter Church in 2020? And what are you most looking forward to as part of Epicenter in 2021? Again, thank you for joining us this morning. A couple of quick reminders. If this is your first time with us, we want to connect with you. So please go to yourepicenter.com/welcome home and fill out a digital connection card there. Also, if you need to talk to a life coach, if you have some questions maybe about some of the things that you heard, or you're going through a time you just want some advice or some guidance, there's a number on the screen right here that you can call or text, and a life coach will get in contact with you. Also, you can go to ekidsathome.com and you can check out the content we have there for kids in kindergarten through 5th grade. Epic students will be in person and online this Wednesday at 7 o'clock p.m. for our 2021 kickoff party. So if you have students in grades 6 through 12, we would love to have them join us for that. And if you want to give to Epicenter Church, you can do that online at yourepicenter.com/give. One more time, thank you so much for joining us for Stay Home for the Holidays Week 2, and we cannot wait to see you next Sunday, January 10th, as we kick off the brand new series, the brand new theme for the year with Fulfilled. We will see you there.